Hi, Jeannie here, and today I'm going to show, per request from a couple of different people, what is basically needed to start your own glass blowing studio in your home. So it's basically going to just be the basics and generalization, because there are tons of equipment, tons of tools, but I just want to get you covered with what's basically needed to start you off in glass. Thanks, and I hope you enjoy. Okay, the first and probably most important piece of equipment you're going to need if you want to melt glass is a torch. This is probably a hothead torch. Is probably the cheapest route if you want to just try it out. It works off of a MAP gas canister that this just connects right into, and you basically tie this clamp around the MAP gas canister, and then it can mount right onto your workbench or table or whatever you're using. I think these are around $40 or something like that. I'm not really sure, but this is probably the cheapest way to go just to try it out. It does take longer to melt any glass pieces you're making, and I would just probably be able to make small beads. I think the biggest bead I made was like a 1-inch round bead with this hothead, and it took a long time to melt it. So that's like the basic. Then we have other torches, many other torches. This is a mini CC, which is great for, you know, bead making. If you want to do bead making, small boro sculpture or pieces, small boro beads, but not really good for larger boro stuff. This is a miner, a Nortel miner, and I had this for years that I used, and then I went to the Mega Miner, which is a little bit more forceful of a flame. You can do a little bit bigger stuff with it, but it's basically the same design, and I have a marver on the top. You can get these with an optional marver to go on the top, which is very handy. And then this is a mid-range torch, which it has an inner flame, which is kind of like the little mini CCs or miners. It's a small inner flame, or you can turn on or have the outer flame. And I think it all goes on at the same time, actually. And so this is for melting bigger stuff if you want to do boro or bigger pieces or tubing. It's really good for that, but it doesn't get really fine tipped to do fine detail work. It's really hard to get fine detail work out of this. But anyways, these are just some examples, and right now I'm using a Bravo torch, which has an inner flame and an outer flame. But there's many other torches out there, great torches. There's an Alpha, there's a Bethlehem Alpha, there's a Lynx, you know, so there's a ton of different choices. But like the mid-range, the mini CC, the Lynx, those are all like basic starter torches, or if you want to do beadwork. And then they get really big and really expensive from there. And so if you, it depends on what you want to make. If you want to do boro work, if you want to do soft glass beadwork like I do for the most part. So just an example of some of the torches that are out there. I also forgot to mention that with any of these other torches besides the hothead torch, which I showed you first, these run off of oxygen and propane. And so you would need to get a propane tank, which is readily available just like your regular barbecue tank, but then you need an oxygen source. So you either need to get tanked oxygen, or you can get a concentrator, like a used medical oxygen concentrator. So either one, you would need to be able to run one of these other torches that I had here. All except for that hothead, which runs off of a MAP gas canister. So just an FYI with that, you will also need gas and oxygen for any of these other torches. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is the safety aspect. Of course, you need fireproof surfaces. So you can buy these boards. I think it's like a 16-foot square, and they're fireproof boards. And you can buy these boards like at Home Depot or Lowe's or something like that to put them right on your table or your workbench or what have you, just to keep your work surface fireproof and not have to worry about burning right through your table or anything, or starting a fire. So there's that. There's also what I did with my workbench was an old like laminate work table from a printing shop, and I actually mortared down ceramic tiles, and so you could do that too to fireproof your spot. And so you just want to make sure that everything is fireproofed. The ground, because glass will fly around and glass will fall on the floor, you want to make sure the floor around your work area is also fireproofed. So you could put these down, just butt them up next to each other and make a nice area that's fireproof. Or you can actually get bigger. I used to have like a bigger 4x8 foot fireproof board that I would put down. Or you can work on a cement floor. So that's also good. And right now I have my studio in the garage, so I do have a cement floor, so I don't have to worry about fireproofing it. Also, you want to make sure you have accurate ventilation for your studio. You need a really strong industrial fan to suck out any of the glass fumes that come from your torch. And but you can also, if you're just trying it out, you could just have like one of these little fireproof boards, and you can do it outside on your patio and not have to worry about the fumes too much, especially if you're not going to be doing it that many hours at a time, that many days a week. But if you are actually going to be doing it for any length of time, I strongly suggest having a really good fan. I have like, it's just shy of 1,000 CFM, that's cubic feet per minute, a fan sucking out from the roof of my garage any of the fumes. And you also need a source of incoming fresh air, so you have to have a door open, a window open or something, so the fresh air could come in while the fumed air is being sucked out. So it's just as important to have the incoming air as the outgoing. So just an FYI on that, and let's move to the next thing. My workbench is like really super messy right now, but this is my exhaust fan. And it goes up, and I have a big industrial fan up there. Okay, the next thing you're going to need is a kiln, and I'll show you a picture of my kiln in a minute, but it's really noisy in there because my exhaust fan is sucking constantly, basically, unless I unplug it. But I'm going to show you that in a second. But you want a decent kiln, especially if you want to do this for a living, if you want to actually sell your pieces, and make sure they're properly annealed and as strong as the glass can be. Of course, it's still glass. If it's dropped or whatever, it can still break. But having it in the kiln for the proper temperature for the glass you're working with, and annealing it for that specific period of time, allows all the molecules to settle and form the strongest bond possible to make your glass, as strong as it's going to be. So just an FYI, if you really want to do this for a living, and if you want to make really good pieces that aren't going to crack later on down the road, I highly suggest getting a kiln. It's very important. So let me show you that now. So this is my kiln. It's very, very old. I've had it for about, maybe 12 years or so. Maybe a little longer than that, I don't know. But it's a Paragon, and it's the long one. It's 24 inches long. It has the automatic timing mechanism, so you don't have to worry about manually turning down the temperature or anything. And I have, if you can see, I have a little grate in there that's a little grate in there to actually hold the beads. When I put the mandrels in, it actually holds the beads in there. So that's really convenient to have. And so it's nice to have, if you're going to make beads, it's nice to have the little bead door on it. So just an FYI. But there's also tons of different kilns that you could choose from. Okay, so yeah, we're back in my dining room. So yeah, there are tons of different kilns to choose from. And they are quite expensive. So it is a major investment if you are going to get a kiln. But it's so worth it. You really need it. If you are considering, you know, selling any of your product, I would highly suggest getting a kiln. I mean, it's pretty much imperative that you have one. So my kiln is just an annealing kiln. So basically all I can do is anneal glass, like, you know, boro and soft glass, because it only gets up to 1200 degrees. So I can't do fusing, which is, you know, melting the glass together. It doesn't get hot enough for that. But there are fusing kilns, which you can also anneal in. And so if you really want a fusing kiln, or if you want to be able to try that too, make sure you get the one that'll get a high enough temperature, maybe around 2000 degrees or so. So you could fuse also. But just an FYI on that. But there's a ton of different kilns out there. Go check them out. If you do not have a kiln, like if you're just starting out and if you're just playing around and practicing and you're not going to be selling, there's this product called Annealing bubbles, and they're like little tiny balls of special silica based product, which I put in with fiber blanket in a tin. So the fiber blanket helps keep in the warmth, and you can shove, after the glow is gone, you got to make sure the glow is gone from your bead, no more glow, then you can shove it in the annealing bubbles, and actually it will help keep it from cracking. But I wouldn't suggest putting anything, you know, larger than an inch in here. That should go directly in the kiln. But if you put smaller beads in here, smaller pieces of glass in here, it's very convenient, and you can just pile them up, and then later you can batch anneal them in a kiln if you're using a friend's kiln or what have you. And so I use the annealing bubbles if I'm doing like just a test, like a new design test or practice beads or something like that. I really don't use, most of my glass goes directly into the kiln, and that's the safest way to anneal your glass. Even small beads, even though they most of them might come out okay and not crack on you, but even small beads can crack being put in the annealing bubbles and then later being put into a kiln. So it's not guaranteed, but this is a way. I know some people also put use vermiculite. They put it in vermiculite, which I think the annealing bubbles are a little bit better at keeping the heat in, but vermiculite can do it too. So just an FYI on that. So hopefully that helps. On to the next thing.